In Mormonism, if you ask people, what's the first vision? They all obviously mention Joseph Smith and the Sacred Grove. But if you ask people, what do we mean by the vision? Most people will say Doctrine and Covenants, section 76, the revelation that Joseph Smith received on the 3 degrees of glory, that he says one is like the sun, and one is like the moon, and one is like the stars, that they differ from one another in glory, but guess what? Each one of these is a heaven. Celestial, terrestrial, telestial heaven. This is a monumental revelation. Not many revelations get much bigger than this. It's an interesting section in that it's probably the only section in the Doctrine and Covenants that is self-contained, meaning it provides its own context as to how the vision came about and how the doctrine that's taught in there came about. I want to provide a little broader context to perhaps help you see the importance of what Joseph received here from the Lord. To do so, we have to talk about some common conceptions held by most Christians, and it has to do simply with heaven and hell. Ask most people who are believing Christians in the Old and New Testaments, and there's a simple division. Love Jesus, and you go to heaven. Don't accept Jesus, you go to hell, where there will be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth forever. The difficulty is, and I've heard some Christian preachers say this, if you believe in that, then you believe that probably the vast majority of mankind will be going here, because the vast majority of mankind are not Christians and have not accepted Jesus, let alone follow his ways, if you believe that obedience is part of it as well. On the flip side, however, you have people who are known as universalists. And what's a universalist? Well, just pulling up here right out of the dictionary. In Christian theology, it's a person who believes that all humankind will eventually be saved. And it's answering this question. Will everyone go to heaven? And universalists believe that they will. However, I found this on the internet, and I think it summarizes the debate very well. Which one is more bearable? According to universalism, Hitler's in heaven. According to hellism, which means that people either go to heaven or hell forever, Gandhi is in hell because he's not accepted Jesus. The person that posted this on the blog site that I said, well, maybe we should just believe in neither. And that's not the answer either. The answer comes in the clear revelation that came to Joseph Smith in the John Johnson home in Hiram, Ohio, up here in this second story where his revelation and translation room was. He was engaged in translating the Bible. Specifically, he came to John chapter 5, verse 29, where Jesus teaches, and shall come forth, they that have done good, unto the resurrection of life. And then interesting, look at this, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. So there will be, according to universalist doctrine, a universal resurrection for everyone. However, there will also be damnation for those that have done evil. And this verse caused Joseph Smith to marvel and to wonder, perhaps questioning why God, through the mercy and grace of his Son, would resurrect everyone and save them from death, and yet condemn them to burn in hell forever. Well, I want to show you this interesting poem that Joseph writes. When Joseph is in Nauvoo, W.W. Phelps writes him a poem, and Joseph apparently writes him a poem back. And he puts Doctrine and Covenants 76, the entire thing, into poem. And this is this portion of it. For while in the act of translating his word, which the Lord in his grace had appointed to me, I came to the gospel recorded by John, chapter 5, and the 29th verse, which you'll see. I marveled at these resurrections indeed, for it came unto me by the Spirit direct. And while I did meditate what it all meant, the Lord touched the eyes of my own intellect. And this shows that it was these resurrections, multiple, plural resurrections of everyone that caused Joseph to wonder on this. Joseph wasn't alone in this room, not only him and Sidney, but there were other elders there. Philo Dibble was one of them, and he tells this familiar and fascinating description. Quote, there were other men in the room, perhaps 12, among whom I was one during a part of the time, probably 2/3 of the time. I saw the glory and felt the power, but did not see the vision. The events and conversation, while they were seeing what is written, and many things were seen and related that are not written, I will relate as minutely as is necessary. Joseph would at intervals say, what do I see? As one might say while looking out the window and beholding what all in the room could not see. Then he would relate what he had seen, or what he was looking at. Then Sidney replied, I see the same. Presently Sidney would say, what do I see? And would repeat what he had seen or was seeing, and Joseph would reply, I see the same. This manner of conversation was reported at short intervals to the end of the vision, and during the whole time not a word was spoken by any other person. not a sound nor motion made by anyone but Joseph and Sidney. And it seemed to me that they never moved a joint or limb during the time I was there, which I think was over an hour, and to the end of the vision. Joseph sat firmly and calmly all the time in the midst of a magnificent glory, but Sidney sat limp and pale, apparently as limber as a rag, observing which Joseph remarked smilingly, "Sidney is not used to it, as I am." That's a great story there. The revolutionary point, by the way, of section 76 is that everybody born on this earth, except the sons of perdition, will inherit a kingdom of heaven, which led W.W. Phelps to say that this is the greatest news ever published to man. Wilford Woodruff said, "When I read the vision, I felt to love the Lord more than ever before in my life." It was universalist in the sense that everybody was going to go to heaven and everybody will go to heaven, but we're all not going to be in the same place. Those that have loved the Lord will be in a highest heaven, and those that have rejected his word will be in a lowest heaven, but it will yet still be heaven. However, this was difficult to non-universalist people such as Brigham Young. Look what he says right here. "It was a great trial to many," the vision was. Quote, "Some apostatized because God had a place of salvation in due time for all." Young himself had difficulty accepting the idea. And look what Brigham says here. Quote, "My traditions were such that when the vision came first to me, it was so directly contrary and opposed to my former education. I said, 'Wait a little.' I did not reject it, but I could not understand it." Brigham's brother the same, his brother Joseph Young, confessed, quote, "I could not believe it at first. Why the Lord was going to save everybody." Well, that's the miracle of the vision, and that's the message of it. And actually, it is not a vision. It's actually 6 visions within the vision. The first 19 verses explain the context of it, but then you notice here, the first vision here is of the Savior, verses 20 to 24, and then the vision drops, as you can see here, down to a vision of the polar opposite of Satan, verses 25 to 29, not just him, but also to the sons of perdition, 30 to 49. The vision then picks back up and goes to the celestial glory, 50 to 70, terrestrial glory, and then telestial glory. And you'll see these 6 visions within the vision as you study it. As you go into the vision, I would just invite you to look for the phenomenal theology that's taught in here. The grace and mercy, yet justice of God, once again, being shown through his son Jesus Christ and through the great revelator of the last days, Joseph Smith the prophet.